So, hey everybody, this is 10 Ton Hammer. We are having a special here. I'm touring Illfonic Studios in Denver, Colorado. We are talking with some of the developers here. I have here with me Adam Maxwell from Illfonic, and he, otherwise known as Snipe Hunter on the forums. I actually did an interview with him, a written interview on 10tonhammer.com, so you can read that there. And I'll put a link in the description. But thanks, Adam.
Good to talk to you again, man.
I appreciate it. So, can you tell everybody what your role is? Kind of maybe give some background and tell about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the. I guess technically my title is game architect. I don't know that really matters, but I'm like the guy that basically is building the rules for the sandbox. So me and the rest of the designers, basically we take all of our I'll come up with an idea for a system for simulating the ether, right? And then I'll take it to the rest of the designers, and between us we'll hash out all of the actual mechanics for how that works. So my job is kind of like steering that ship, basically.
Okay, awesome. So as kind of the architect for the game and the lead systems designer, it's kind of your goal to make this game work and make it different. Then I think that's one of the big things with games these days. They all feel too much the same. So for games to really succeed now, it seems like they need to be different. And we hear every game talk about, oh, our game's really different, it's innovative, it's next gen. Can you talk about what you're building into Revival that makes it actually different?
For sure. You're exactly right. Like, games are almost templated, especially MMOs these days. I mean, I hate to be super critical, but like, I can look at a game and in 3 screenshots go, oh, that's a Korean grinder, or oh, that's a Western WoW clone, and I feel like we're letting gamers down by doing that, right? Like, the promise of these worlds originally was that they were literally worlds, and so that's what I'm trying to do. We're trying to make Teleston grow and live and evolve based on what the players do in it, and so building the gears that make that machine turn is basically our whole focus right now.
Awesome. So you guys are in the really early stages. How are you designing the systems to work with each other? I've heard a lot about, building smaller compartmental systems that are actually going to interact in a bigger way.
Absolutely. So a lot of times people will tell me when I describe the game that seems super ambitious. I don't see how you can do it. And I totally understand, because if you look at this from like the way you would develop a console game, or even the way you would develop a traditional WoW, all of the systems are like super compartmentalized, and they never really interact with each other, or when they do, they're in very tightly controlled ways. And that's perfect for like really tightly controlled games, but if you're trying to build a game that can move unpredictably, that's not going to work. If you were to try to do it that way, you would end up with these massive megalithic systems that are like, 200 points of failure all in one line of math, or just insanely super complicated, and that's just not going to work. And so for us, the epiphany was, well, what if we took all of those interactions, broke them all apart, designed each of them as bulletproof little systems, and then just let them interact with each other, like I guess I like to say, like the gears in a clock, right? And so that's our strategy, and it's super easy. Like, it's silly to me. Like I said, people always tell us about how ambitious it is, and I guess it is, but in reality, to us, it's like, no, dude, I can design a system in a week, and we can, get it tested in a couple weeks after that, and then we'll know it works. And sure, that one system's going to interact with 20 other ones, but that's the fun part,
Yeah. Also, another thing about this game too, just in interacting in the forums and on you guys' IRC, you guys have actually done a lot of this stuff for past games that just never made it into those games, or there were changes, and you guys are taking it fast.
So this kind of style of game design is really scary from a production standpoint, because some of the emergent behavior that'll come out of the game is not stuff that you want. A really good example, we did some emergent AI stuff in Rift, and we ended up sometimes where like crocodiles would come up out of the water and chase guards, and guards would flee away. And there was no system for that. That was just a result of the way their AI states would work, and it was super ridiculous, right? And so when you see that stuff, especially as you get closer to the end of a game, it's really like the end of a development phase. I mean, it's really easy for someone to go, we can't deal with that. We need to cut that back. We need to not do that. And so that'll happen a lot, especially if a game is like aiming WoW or some other, sort of traditional style, one of those templates I was talking about. And so, yeah, we've been trying to get this kind of thing into a game, gosh, for 14 years now. But, a lot of games just don't have that ambition exactly, and so it ends up getting scaled back or deprioritized, or even implemented but not really utilized. Rift's dynamic event systems are a really good example of that. They work really well, but they're really only actually doing about a tenth of what we originally intended them to do.
Wow. So when it comes to this game and designing these systems, you guys have, I'm kind of drawing a blank here, you guys are putting all these systems together and you're trying to create, it almost feels like a lot of these elements are making a simulated experience, you know, kind of simulating a real world rather than just, you know, faking everything or, you know, just a huge polyplane. Can you talk about kind of the simulation elements about maybe the weather or the world, how you're making things kind of come to life?
Yeah, actually weather's a really good example of the sort of little tiny systems that work together, in fact. So there's a system that basically figures out the atmospheric pressure and temperature in an area. And that sounds awesome, but really it tracks a number that is temperature and a number that is pressure, right? But because of the way we store that data, other systems can then operate on it. So we have another system that is like, I'm a storm cell, and a storm cell lowers temperature, lowers pressure, right, and starts spinning the vector field for wind, right? And so the interaction of these two relatively simple behaviors creates a literal storm system in the game, and we end up, you know, simulating the weather, but at a super, what's the word I'm looking for, super coarse level of granularity. So it's a lot easier for us to get a handle on, but we still get the same cool effect in game. And we do that for, goddamn, everything.
When it comes to really unique systems, when I've been looking at Revival, one of the things that really intrigues me is that combat seems a lot different. It's not just a new take on, you know, a class system or anything like that. You guys actually have a class or a combat system that's totally different. Can you talk about that, and also maybe some details, if you can, about how you're going to have kind of group combat?
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we do almost paradigmatically is we like to take the player out of the equation and put the world in the player's place. So, you know, there are no player quests, for example. There are tons of things to do in the game, but they all exist in the world, and when they're done, and something else will eventually come in and take their place. There's a whole system for spinning that content up and keeping it going. Even combat kind of works the same way. Rather than go, well, one character is going to want to do this kind of thing, which sort of locks you into a class-based system just by the way you're thinking about it, we went, combat is generally a game of this kind of thing, right? And so for us it was, you know, learning technique, learning how to apply your physical attributes so that you pick the best techniques that are well suited for you or the terrain around you, or even, I hate to go back to it, the weather, right? Like if it's super hot, then your stamina is going to drain a lot more quickly, and so maybe you don't want to use a style that's super strength heavy that takes a lot out of you with every move that you do. But more importantly, it's not up to me as the game designer now to decide which combat styles or moves you can use. That's up to you, because you'll find them in the world, you'll learn how to use them, and then in the game, because of the way we build the combat system, you can switch between your various stances and styles on the fly. You'll have to, in fact, if you want to be really good at it. You know, one of the go-to examples we use is the fight between Inigo and the Man in Black in Princess Bride, where they're literally discussing all of the changes in stance and style as they go through the fight. It's exactly the kind of experience that we hope to build in the system. And because anybody can kind of do this with the you know, 40 or 50 different stances, each with their own, you know, 8 or 12 moves in them, the result is nobody's going to fight the same as somebody else on most servers. Maybe if we have millions of players, sure, but individually every fight's going to be a little different.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about group dynamics for if people are going to be engaging in group activities, specifically with combat, and maybe some other unique ones?
So one of the things that we wanted to do in the game was allow players to siege and take over a town, right? And a lot of games have done this, but it ends up kind of being like the equivalent of like a raid in a way, right? Usually it's, you know, almost like a Counter-Strike match. It's structured with a very specific set of goals that you go through stage by stage, and then you like capture the castle or whatever. We wanted it to be a real sort of grand melee combat experience, and we realized the only way that that was going to happen is if we could do things like command forces or have formations. You know, we did a blog recently, I guess not recently, but a few months back about shield walls, and the whole point of the shield wall formation is to allow you to sort of build a phalanx and then fight from behind it, or maneuver it into the field to break up another a defensive wall or whatever. And so we had to build a whole set of mechanics that were like, how well can you command troops? Do the troops that are underneath you, if they're not players like you, how likely are they to follow your orders? And so there's this system in the game where you can not just take big field formations or move siege engines and stuff across the game, which you can totally do, but more importantly, the morale of your troops might break, right? And so if you had hired mercenaries, they may split. They may be like, you know what, it's not worth it. And so the result should be that when you go to take a town, it's as much a game of strategy and management as it is in fighting, exactly as it should be. And so you'll want charismatic generals who are good leaders to rise up rather than any schmuck with a big axe and large pauldrons taking over. Right.
That brings up another thing too I really wanted to bring up is combat. From what I've seen of the game, combat isn't everybody has to take part in this. This is a big portion of the game. It's just one style of play, and there are a lot of others. Can you talk about what some of those other main styles of play might be for a player?
Yeah, actually, it was super important to us that combat not be the only, like, the pinnacle of the game, right? Most MMOs, even when they offer, trade occupations or crafting occupations, they're always like in support of this goal of making the best combat gear. And that's cool, and I understand why we do it, I'm not knocking it, but we wanted combat to be on par with all of those rather than above them, right? And so for us, that meant we had to build a market mechanic so that there was trade. So like, the value of a thing in one city might be different than another depending on its availability and how much the people there want it, which drives different types of crafters to move to different places where they're going to get the most for their work, or to ship goods across using a caravan system, which then further feeds back into things like PvP and banditry or road taxes and politics. So, really we're trying to build a world, right? And so a world can't just be excuses to fight. At best it's a comic book, right? Mind you, some comics are amazing. I'm not.
Yeah. But yeah, I get your point on that. It's really refreshing to see, instead of a game that's just, all about one specific style of play or, flavoring something, it's just creating a simulated environment where, people can just, it's almost like a sandbox,
Yeah.
In a big sense. And I know I've heard you say that a lot, but I really like what you guys are doing. Can you talk about, maybe, as one last thing, what is your favorite system that you've worked on for Revival that you're excited to play with when the game gets closer?
So it sounds strange, but it's totally astrology, right? I have never seen in a game where the stars are in the sky actually matters, right? And we're tying it in not only to like big world events where, if you were trying to summon an elder god, you would only be able to do so when the stars were right, or that kind of stuff, but it also plays into like how powerful certain magics are. The storytellers can implement things where like comets and stuff show up as harbingers of big things to come. So if you understand what the stars mean, you can be like, oh my god, something's gonna happen. And there's this whole sort of like setup that makes the world 10 times more mystical when the system itself is really just a simple thing about painting stuff in the sky and making it matter. You know what I mean? And so like for me, it's both awesome that it's simple because it's clever, but it's also like enables a whole kind of gameplay that I've never seen in an MMO before.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you for sitting down, taking the time to have this interview, and thank you for inviting me out to Illfonic. I had a great time at your studio, and appreciate what you guys are working on. I'm looking forward to see more of it.
Awesome.
So,
Thanks.